the Antarctic ice wall, and the Tartarian exit. The Great Migration beyond the known world. In 1959, at the peak of the Cold War, something impossible happened. Two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, who were ready to vaporize each other with nuclear fire, sat down at a table and signed a piece of paper that has never been broken, the Antarctic Treaty. 12 nations agreed to one thing: no one owns Antarctica, no one mines it, no one colonizes it, and most importantly, no private citizen is allowed to explore it. Today, that treaty is enforced by 54 nations. It is the only international law that has survived every war, every economic collapse, and every ideological shift of the last 70 years. Why? Mainstream science tells us we are protecting pristine snow and scientific data. But have you ever asked yourself why you need a military escort and a government permit to visit a desert of ice? Why is the most expensive and heavily guarded border on Earth located at the bottom of the world, where nobody lives? The answer isn't in the ice. It's in what the ice is hiding. If you look at the maps from before the 19th century Great Reset, Antarctica wasn't a wasteland. It was a lush, mountainous landmass. Some maps call it Terra Australis Incognita. Others show it inhabited by advanced civilizations. But the Tartarian narrative tells us something even more shocking. Antarctica isn't a continent at all. It is the ice wall. It is the physical boundary of our pond. A massive ring of ice, 150 feet tall and thousands of miles long, that holds our oceans in and keeps us from seeing the outer lands. And in 1816, the year history went dark, it became the exit point for the greatest migration in human history. Welcome to the Tartarian exit. Today, we are going to find out where they went. The cartographic anomaly, the green Antarctica. If you want to hide the truth, you have to burn the maps. But the founders of the New World missed a few. Look at the Piri Reis map of 1513. It was discovered in the Topkapi Palace in Turkey. It shows the coastline of Antarctica with staggering accuracy centuries before we supposedly discovered the continent in 1820. But here is the catch. It shows the coastline without ice. It shows rivers, mountains, and forests. Modern seismic surveys have confirmed that the coastline of Antarctica actually looks like that beneath the ice. How did a 16th century sailor know what the continent looked like before the ice cap formed? The sudden freeze. Mainstream geology tells us Antarctica has been frozen for millions of years, but the Tartarian narrative suggests otherwise. Before 1816, the Earth's climate was regulated by a global atmospheric energy grid. The star forts and the massive stone domes weren't just buildings, they were frequency stabilizers. They maintained a temperate, paradise-like climate across the entire plain. When the Great Reset began the period of the mud flood and the energy wars, the grid was sabotaged. The founders used directed energy weapons to collapse the atmospheric layers, leading to a flash freeze of the poles. In a matter of days, the lush, southern paradise of the Tartarian elite was encased in miles of ice. This was the creation of the prison wall. But the Tartarians weren't caught off guard. They knew the reset was coming. They had already mapped the outer lands beyond the ice, and they had already begun the Great Exit, Operation Highjump, the defeat of the New World. In 1946, shortly after the end of World War II, the United States didn't go home to celebrate. Instead, they launched a massive military invasion of Antarctica called Operation Highjump. Led by Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, this wasn't a scientific expedition, it was a battle group, 4,700 soldiers, 13 ships, and 33 aircraft. The official mission was to explore the ice. The retreat. The mission was supposed to last 6 months. It was cut short after only 8 weeks. They fled. Admiral Byrd returned to the United States and gave a chilling interview to El Mercurio in Chile. He warned that the U.S. must prepare for the possibility of an attack by hostile craft that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. What did Byrd find? In his leaked private journals documents, the government has spent millions to debunk. Byrd describes flying beyond the South Pole into a land that was warm, green, and vibrant. He described seeing massive, disc-shaped craft that moved without sound or propellers. He described being taken to a city made of crystalline stone, where the people spoke in a harmonic frequency. These weren't aliens from another planet. Byrd had stumbled upon the Tartarian remnant. He found the survivors of the 19th century reset, who had rebuilt their civilization in the inner lands. The US military tried to seize their technology, and they were soundly defeated by the Flugelrads, the mercury vortex craft of the Old World. The Antarctic Treaty wasn't a scientific pact, it was a surrender document. The founders agreed to keep humanity locked in the inner pond in exchange for not being annihilated by the Tartarians living beyond the ice wall. The geometry of the exit, the infinite plane. To understand the exit, you have to unlearn everything you were taught in school about the globe. In the Tartarian model, the Earth is not a spinning ball flying through a vacuum. It is a vast, stationary plane of existence. Our known world, the continents we see on our maps, is just one pond in an infinite ocean of land. The South Pole isn't a point, it's a ring. The ice wall. The ponds of humanity. Imagine a frozen lake with multiple holes cut into the ice. Each hole is a pond containing its own continents and its own sun. We are living in one of these ponds. Beyond our ice wall, there are other ponds, other suns, and other civilizations. The Tartarians were the masters of this global geometry. They knew that if you fly past the 90-degree southern marker, you don't come back around the ball. You cross into the outer lands. This is the Tartarian exit. When the founders began their coup in the 1800s, the Tartarian elite didn't fight a losing war for a sabotaged pond. They took their technology, their families, and their knowledge, and they crossed the boundary. They navigated the magnetic corridors of the ice wall and moved into the summer lands beyond. The founders stayed behind to rule the ruins. They created the globe model to make us feel small, isolated, and trapped. If they can convince you that you are on a ball in a vacuum, you will never think to look for the exit. You will never realize that the outer lands are just a flight away. Star forts as navigational beacons. If you were a navigator trying to cross an infinite plane of ice, you would need more than a compass. You would need a frequency-based lighthouse. Look at the locations of the most southern star forts on Earth. Fort Bulnes in Chile, the massive stone structures in South Africa, the unexplained ruins in New Zealand. Mainstream history says these were colonial outposts built to guard trade routes. But look at the trade routes. There was nothing down there worth guarding with a billion-dollar stone masterpiece. The magnetic corridor. In the Tartarian exit theory, these southern star forts were resonant beacons. By using the iron oxide in their red bricks and the mercury in their central domes, they created a magnetic bridge that stabilized the chaotic energy of the ice wall. They acted as the GPS for the Great Migration. As the Tartarian ships, powered by atmospheric induction, approached the ice, they would lock on to the frequency of the southern star forts. These structures were the departure gates. Today, these sites are almost all occupied by modern military installations or designated as restricted zones. They are still on, vibrating at a frequency we can no longer hear. They are the silent witnesses to the day the smartest, most powerful humans on Earth left us behind and headed for the horizon. Vortex technology, the wings of the old world. If the Tartarians left, how did they do it? They didn't use the primitive, coal-burning steam engines we were taught about in the Industrial Revolution. They didn't use the fossil fuel-guzzling rockets of the 20th century. To cross the infinite plane of the ice wall, they used vortex technology. In ancient Vedic texts, they were called vimanas. In the 19th century, they were the airships that people reported seeing over American cities' craft that moved against the wind without propellers. The secret was mercury. The mercury, superfluid mercury, is a liquid metal. When it is purified and subjected to high-voltage atmospheric electricity, the energy harvested by the star forts and cathedral spires, it becomes a superfluid. By spinning this mercury at incredible speeds within a pressurized, toroidal donut-shaped container, you create a localized electromagnetic field. that negates gravity. This isn't science fiction. This is the physics of the Meissner effect and superconductivity. By creating a Meissner field around the craft, the Tartarians could decouple themselves from the Earth's magnetic pull. They didn't fly, they floated on the ether. The exit craft. When the Great Reset began in 1816, the Tartarian elite didn't need to fight for the mud-covered ruins of their cities. They loaded their most vital knowledge, their biological archives, and their families into these vortex-driven craft. They flew toward the 60th parallel, the ice wall. While the founders of the New World were busy burning books and rounding up orphans, the masters of the Old World were crossing the frozen barrier at speeds the modern military still cannot match. They moved into the Summerland's vibrant, warm continents located beyond the ice, where the energy of the ether is still pure and unobstructed by the New World grid. The NASA PSYOP, the conceptual cage. If there is a world beyond the ice wall, why aren't we looking for it? Why is every child in America taught that the frontier is in outer space, millions of miles away, rather than just past the horizon? The Great Distraction. In the 1950s, right after Admiral Byrd returned from Operation Highjump with warnings of a superior civilization at the poles, two things happened. The Antarctic Treaty was signed to block physical access. NASA was created to block mental access. The space program is the ultimate psychological operation. By convincing humanity that we live on a tiny blue marble floating in a hostile, infinite vacuum, the founders created a conceptual cage. If you believe that up is the only way out, you will never look out toward the ice wall. The dome and the vacuum NASA's imagery is almost entirely CGI, computer-generated imagery. They admit to compositing photos because, as they say, it has to be. But the Tartarian narrative suggests a simpler truth. The Van Allen radiation belt isn't a natural phenomenon. It is a boundary. We are living under a firmament, or a high-energy atmospheric shield. The space they show us on television is a distraction. The billions of dollars spent on Mars missions and moon landings are actually being spent on monitoring the ice wall. They aren't looking for aliens in distant galaxies. They are guarding the border to ensure that we don't leave and that the Tartarians don't come back. The space program is the security camera on the prison wall, the left behind, descendants of the reset. We have to ask the most painful question. If the Tartarians were so advanced, why did they leave us behind? Why are we living in this metered reality of taxes, debt, and limited energy? The biological split, the Great Migration, wasn't for everyone. When the atmospheric grid collapsed in 1816, the world was thrown into chaos. The mud flood buried the lower levels of the cities. The food supply failed. Disease, caused by the change in atmospheric frequency, ran rampant. The Tartarian elite, the scientists, the architects, the high priests of frequency, realized the pond had been compromised. They chose to preserve the civilization by moving it. But millions of people were left behind in the mud. The reprogramming. We are the descendants of the survivors who didn't make it to the ships. To ensure we wouldn't try to follow them, the founders had to perform a total cultural lobotomy. The asylums, used to lock up the adults who remembered the old world. The orphan trains, used to take the children and reset their history. The education system, used to replace etheric science with scarcity science. They taught us that we are evolved monkeys who invented the steam engine. They taught us that energy is expensive and limited. They turned us into a slave race to maintain the ruins of a civilization we no longer understand. We are living in a 5-star hotel, but we are convinced we are living in a cave. Cracks in the ice. Modern forensics. Even with the treaty and the space program, the truth is leaking out. In the age of high-definition cameras and independent flight tracking, the founders can no longer hide the cracks in the ice wall narrative. The flight path anomaly. Have you ever tried to book a direct flight from Santiago, Chile, to Sydney, Australia? On a globe, the shortest path is over Antarctica. But no commercial flight ever goes over the pole. Instead, they fly thousands of extra miles in curves around the edges. Official reason: safety and weather. The real reason: if a commercial pilot flew over the pole, they would see that there is no point. They would see the infinite plane. They would see the outer lands. The GPS systems on modern planes are programmed with a hard code to reroute any aircraft that approaches the forbidden parallels. The thermal leaks. In 2026, satellite thermal imagery, unfiltered, has shown massive heat plumes coming from the Antarctic interior. Ice doesn't produce heat. These are the signatures of industrial-scale atmospheric energy hubs. The Tartarians beyond the wall are still active. They are still using the ether. Occasionally, glitches in the Google Earth matrix show perfectly geometric structures, pyramids, and domes peeking through the melting ice. These aren't ancient ruins from millions of years ago. They are the border outposts of the civilization that left us. The DNA awakening, the return to the source. The founders thought they could erase Tartaria. They thought that by burning the maps and freezing the poles, they could own the human soul. But they forgot one thing: the DNA. Your body is not just a biological machine. It is an antenna. Every cell in your body is tuned to the frequency of the Earth's original grid. This is why you feel a pull when you look at a star fort. This is why you feel a longing when you look at the southern horizon. The frequency shift. We are currently entering a period of natural reionization. The reset is wearing off. The energy that once powered the Tartarian Empire is returning to the atmosphere. People all over the world are waking up. We are seeing through the CGI. We are questioning the globe. And we are remembering who we are. We are not the left behind. We are the keepers of the spark. The final truth. The ice wall is not a wall of ice. It is a wall of fear. The only thing keeping you from the outer lands is the belief that you are trapped. Once you realize that the maps are lies, once you realize that energy is free, and once you realize that your ancestors didn't die, they transcended, the cage vanishes. The Tartarians are waiting, not in the sky, not in another galaxy, but just beyond the ice. They left us the keys in the stone, in the cathedrals, and in the star-shaped motherboards of our cities. It's time to stop looking at the space they show you on TV. It's time to start looking at the world with your own eyes. The great exit was their journey. The great return is ours.